Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar tonight. My name is Makhaje Setlalentwa. I am a member of the BMF and I am serving in the Bloemfontein branch. So welcome to our personal financial management seminar. This is a topic that's very close to my heart. I used to be a private banker myself, so I take this very seriously, and I hope we can all learn something tonight from our guests. So tonight we've got two guests. We've got Mr. Shadrach Lenong from Sanlam, who's a senior financial planner, as well as Mr. Jimmy Golele from the National Credit Regulator. So how this evening is going to go, we are going to have two 30-minute sessions from both gentlemen. After each session, we'll have a question and answer session whereby we'll take about 5 questions from each guest, and depending on how much time we have after the webinar, we'll be able to maybe take more questions. It will all depend on how we are with time. So it is 8 minutes after 6 right now. We have until 7:30 to learn and also to share our knowledge. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat, as well as raise your hand if you have. But as I said, we will take questions after each speaker. So without wasting any time, I would like to introduce Mr. Shadrach Lenong. He is a financial planner contracted to Sanlam. He's a member of the Financial Planning Institute. Ndate Lenong has a postgraduate diploma in financial planning, which he obtained from the University of the Free State. He's got a professional management diploma, which he obtained from UNISA / the Open University of London. And he is also a former chairperson of the BMF in the Free State. His topic tonight is spending plan or / budgeting post-COVID-19. Mr. Shadrach, over to you, sir, and welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight.
Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, friends. Thank you, Makhaje. I would like to take the tone of our president and say fellow compatriots, fellow citizens. Then you can either expect good news or bad news. Can I just share my screen as I'm about to say something about being a fellow citizen maybe, or a fellow South African? All right, tonight, friends, I just want to share a little bit about post-COVID-19 spending plan. We all know that COVID-19 was never ever planned for, and nobody expected it. Internationally or globally, we know all we were not expecting this type of negative impact. This COVID-19 is really a game changer. It's changed the way we do our family work, the way we spend, the way we work. Most of the things changed. And everybody, big and small, was affected. Small countries, big countries, emerging markets, developed markets were equally affected. This COVID-19 does not have a respecter for persons. It hits from top to bottom and bottom to up. South African markets fell by about 30%. We are still struggling to recover. We have seen, we were really improving very positively, but the last 2 weeks or a week and a half has been very, very hard for us who are in the investment markets. Our funds and our values fell a little bit, and we are struggling to pick up. But eventually, we will all win. We have to all hold hands together. We were surprisingly given 3 to 6 months unplanned for leave. Everybody had to be at home, something unusual. We had to learn about the things called mask, social distancing, and all those things. We could not visit our friends and all those things. It was really a very, very negative impact on the society. Groceries expenses almost doubled. I have 3 sons in my house. Those who have boys, they know. Once they're at home, they just go and play and they're back in the house, and then you have to go and buy something new after they have gone into the kitchen. So groceries doubled. It affected our budgets negatively. Some had their incomes dropped or cut, or some even 100% cut. It is still really a very, very bad situation. Some have improved, some are still struggling to pick up where they left in March. The debt have increased. Personal loans and the credit cards, according to the surveys, so that they are showing us that people have, because of financial constraints, they had to go for personal loans and go for credit cards, or even increase their limits on their credit cards, because they could not make end meets, because the income coming into the house was very small. Home loans and car installments fell in arrears. Many entered into what we call debt reliefs, which I think Ndate Golelo will talk about. People had to make arrangements. Even now that we are going back to work, these home loans and car installments are still in arrears. We still have to make plans to make end meets. One of the things that we learned during this period was the benefits and the importance of funeral plans and life covers. I know sometimes when I started with the insurance industry, they used to call us should you dies. Every time when you go to people to make a presentation, oh, we know Mr. Lino, it's a should you die. Funeral plan or life cover, while there are investments, there are many other things that we're talking about. But during this period, being involved in this industry of insurance, I've seen funeral plans playing a major role in helping our families. People were dying left, right, and center. And those who had funeral plans, they really helped them a lot. And also, parents who had life covers, really the payouts helped their families to pay out the debts, and they also served as a inheritance for their children. And I encouraged many people who wanted to cancel these policies because of budget constraints. I said, no, don't do it. We can hear day in and day out that people are dying, and we don't have any exemption. What we learned also, Zoom meetings became a new norm of business communication. All over, every day during the lockdown, almost every day I was involved or invited to a Zoom meeting, whether it was my company or investment companies making presentations, trying to encourage us and all those things. So Zoom meetings are the new norm, and we must really go for it. We must not be afraid. I hope I have a lot of young people than myself here, because now we older people, they say we are those people who did the things before technology. So we cannot really adjust quickly, but I'm trying. You can just see if I'm able to do this, then I wonder how many young people can do it better than myself. Now, reopening and going back to work, this is very, very much important. These few points I'm going to talk about. When you are dealing with your post-COVID spending plan or budgeting, really remember this thing. Don't cancel your policies. Whether it's investment or it's funerals or life covers or retirement plans. Level 1 does not mean the end of infections and deaths. This thing, COVID-19, is still well in our life. We need to really keep on holding on to our policies so that should the unexpected happen or the unfortunate happen, our policies are intact and our families can be able to provide for our needs. The other important thing is readjust your spending plan. Spending plan is almost budgeting. Well, I had originally arranged to make a presentation on the full spending plan thing, but I thought it would be better for us just to really be more practical. It's the thing that we have been doing presentation over many years ago, and it's still the thing that is going on today. But I thought, let us be relevant and be up to date and deal with the things of today. Readjust your spending plan. Now, in readjusting your spending plan, you have to prioritize your debts. You have to prioritize your spending. First things first. Like when you look at point number 3, we look at the debts with high interest rates. If you pay up your, say now your car, your home loan, the interest rate on the home loan is very, very low. It won't solve that much of your problems. But our biggest enemies in terms of interest rates are personal loans, credit cards, and vehicle loans. So it is important as you readjust your spending plan, look at these particular things. Also, with the things that we have this store accounts like Edgar's Truworths. They have gone to where they say you can pay your account over 12 or 24 months. But the catch is that after, I think it's after 6 or 9 months, they start to add interest on your account. So you need to really check and confirm with them. If we say we agree on 12 or 24 months, how much interest are you going to add? You will find out that it is almost equivalent to the one of credit cards and of personal loans. So it is important, it is of cardinal importance that we deal with these personal loans. We cannot accumulate wealth when we are highly indebted. We need to reduce our debts so that we can have a higher disposable income, which will help us to save and invest for the future. I always tell young people that you don't have to wait like myself until when you retire, then you call yourself a millionaire because of the pension fund, and you're going to only to get the 1/3 thereof and the rest you get it on a monthly basis. Why wait for 60 years or 55 years to be a millionaire or a multimillionaire? I encourage you to, as you are planning for your debts, really plan to be a multi-millionaire, maybe in 10 years' time or 20 years' time. You can be and you can do it. But the key is we need to deal with our debts. We must reduce our debts. Our debts are taking a lot out of us, and they put us under stress, under pressure, in such a way that we neglect some of the things which have an impact on our futures. So we really need to readjust our spending plan. And once you work on this spending plan, you'll be able to be on the driving seat. You'll be in control of your finances. But if you don't, you'll find out that your money controls you. I always make a joke about some clients of my teacher clients around Velcom. When they started with these personal loans, you know, these guys were targeting them, the loan sharks and all those things. Then they found out that now we are over-indebted. So whenever it's month end, they would say, the people from the garage nearby my house, they would say, round about 12 o'clock, we'll see these guys coming around, going to the ATM and withdrawing the money. They say they want to withdraw it as soon as possible before the other guys can deduct their monies. So then it means they are totally out of control. But spending plan helps you to be in control of your finances. It's really very encouraging at the end of the month when you look at your monies and you allocate your money according to how you have planned for, not your money planning for itself. Some people would say to me, I hate month ends. I said, why? They said, at month end, I cannot enjoy my money. It's always fights at home because now we cannot meet all the needs. We cannot control our budget. We cannot control our spending plan. We don't enjoy our monies. But once you do this readjusting, after these things that I talked about that happened, that caused us to be in debt, increased loans and all those things. Once you put a plan in place to control them, then you will enjoy your month end. You will enjoy your money and you will know exactly where is your money. Sometimes other people get worried because they don't even know where their money has gone to. They just see their balances are now at zero. The other important thing is you must not avoid or neglect the stores when they phone you about your outstanding or your accounts which are in arrears. If you do that, I call it an ostrich strategy. You put, when the ostrich is in trouble, they say it will run away. When the enemy gets closer, then it will just stop and put its head in the sand, meaning about 2% is in the sand, 98% is still exposed to the enemy. What is the moral of the story? By hiding or neglecting or making as if you don't have debt, not dealing with them does not solve the problem. It will still be there next month. The other month is still be there until you decide to face up with your problem and say, my debts, I am the one who created you. My debts, I'm going to manage you and I'm going to get rid of you. It is very, very possible. But if you neglect or run away or hide away from the stores where you have accounts, then it will affect your credit rating. Tomorrow when you want to do a big buy, like maybe you want to buy a second house or the first house, the car, the second car, whatever, then you'll find it has affected your credit rating. So be careful, manage it. When you manage your accounts properly, you are automatically managing and increasing your credit rating. The other important thing is stop being impulsive. Impulsive buying, unplanned buying does not help. Can I be a little bit controversial? Makhaje, especially ladies, you did not hear me. We have this tendency of spending because we see a new thing or it is fashionable. Now that I see my friend wearing it or buying it, whether I planned it for it or not, I just buy it because I can see that it is fashionable or it is nice. Please stop impulsive buying. Impulsive buying will contribute into your living in a debt over a long time. Please, once you have a budget in place, once you have your spending plan in place, don't just redivert the money to something that you did not plan for. For an example, you take the money or you agree at home, I'm going to pay or these stores. I don't know if it is acceptable for me to quote some of them, but let me just use the word stores. Then once you do your window shopping, before you arrive at that particular shop, then you see something, instead of going to pay that, settle that account, you buy a new thing. You don't solve the problem, you're postponing your problems. It will still be there the next month. It will still be worrying you, it will still be stressing you, it will make you not to enjoy your money. But we want you to enjoy your money by having a proper spending plan. The other important thing is many companies or stores, they know because of this COVID-19, many people are in need of money. Their cash flow has been adversely affected. Now they start to do what we call telemarketing. They will phone you after hours and make you some offers and say, no, we have a credit card. The fashionable one now is the black one. Once you have a black one, it's as if you have arrived. But guess what? You have arrived in big debts. And after your friends have congratulated you with that black card, you just swipe and they just call you the big guy. At the end of the month, the friends will be there, won't be there, but that black card will be confronting and say, pay me or else, pay me or else. Also, the stores, they are starting to make what you call offers to increase your credit. Now, sometimes because now I've not been working, maybe you have gained weight or you've lost weight, I don't know. Then you get tempted to say, no, my credit limit is almost exhausted. The best thing for me now will be to just increase my credit. Guess what? You'll have those new suit, new shoes, new trousers, new jacket, and whatever. But at the following month, the account will be confronting and say, pay me or else. So I'm encouraging you, colleagues, we need to really manage our debts. We need to work on getting out of debt. We need to work on accumulating wealth. And especially young people, I'm appealing with you. You don't need 30 years or 20 years to be a multimillionaire. Start to invest, seek advice, and we will show exactly what to do to be a multimillionaire in a short period of time. Now, I'm almost at the end of my informal presentation. I don't know how much time is left for me. Makhaje, I think I've done it for now. Let's go for questions so that we can give Mr. Golele the chance to do his presentation. Then I can deal with other things after we have done everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that insightful information. I mean, you've touched on a lot of things like risk management, your insurances, I mean, that protect us from losing our assets. It's important to still keep them. And dealing with debt, impulsive spending. It's not only us women, you know, men like their big toys.
Okay.
And then most importantly, I mean, if you, we live in a world where we have to use credit to purchase assets in most cases. So you won't be able to do that if you do not have a clean credit record. So thank you for sharing this information. I think, again, Shadrach, you were very practical with the examples that you've made. You know, you took it home and it's not a lot of financial jargon, you know, and we all got at least what we can do, you know, post-COVID. And I think these lessons are also from, you know, before COVID, but now you just have to be stricter on yourself in order to not find yourself in a pit. So thank you for this information. Is there a question?
Yes, there's a question. Can I go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Melili. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ndate Shadrach, for that excellent presentation. Can I just ask a quick one? Do you have any tips for us on how to readjust our spending plans? Because this is the challenge now, that you need to adjust how you spend the money. But if we can have some tips on what is the best way of readjusting the spending plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. Can I go ahead?
Yes, you may, sir.
Thank you, Lily. I appreciate your question. Readjusting your spending plan is really something that you must sit down and work on it. I mentioned the word prioritizing, meaning in terms of your debts, you need to prioritize them. In terms of the income also, you need to see what type of an income is coming to my hands. What do I pay first, and how much do I save? How much do I spend? Now, what you do sometimes, if your income is still a bit constrained, what you could do is to say, for the next 2 months, I'm going to concentrate on the personal loan. And when I do that, I'm going to do it maybe at the expense of my credit card or one of my store accounts. Maybe I will omit it for a month or two so that I can increase the payment into my personal loans. So you are accelerating the settlement of the loan. But at the same time, you don't make a mistake of letting other accounts be in big arrears or getting these calls in the evening that you don't like, where you even have to say, I can't hear you. Who are you? But you can hear. It's somebody who wants his money. But to avoid that, once you have omitted one month or two, phone them, speak to them and say, next month I will bring it up to date, maybe with one installment. If you make arrangements, then you know your plan. The strategy is, I want to get rid of my personal loans. Once I get rid of my personal loan, then I shift the installment of the personal loan into my credit card, and then I continue to bring my other accounts up to date. Once the credit card is finished, then you target the car. You increase the installment because you're not used to that money. You have been using it for paying your accounts. So once you start to do that, the loan is paid up. That money, you don't plan a new thing for it. You say, I must settle my credit card. After it has been done, this amount is available. I'm going to use it to settle other accounts until I am out of debts or my debts are under control. The main thing is they must be under control. I don't know if that helps. Lily?
Yes, that definitely helps. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lily, for your question. Also, maybe just to add on to what Shadrack had said, you know, sometimes another way to start is to look at your personal goals in life, what you want to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then that will make it easier for you to know how to prioritize which, you know, to prioritize your spending. So if you've got a vision board and keep going back to that vision board, then your vision board your spending must be in line with your vision board. But thank you, Dr. Shadrack. That is perfect. It's practical examples, simple things to do on a daily basis in order for us to get our spending plans in order. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is that I'm going to move on to our next guest. Thank you, Dr. Shadrack, again for sharing your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it. And hope we can gain some more knowledge from you in the future. But thank you for making the time to join us tonight. And hopefully there'll be more questions before we end our webinar tonight. Thank you, sir. So now we are going to move on to our next guest. And our next guest is Mr. Jimmy Golele. Mr. Jimmy Golele is the Senior Consumer Education and Communication Officer at the National Credit Regulator. And he started in 2014 in June to date. So prior to joining the National Credit Regulator, he was a deputy manager responsible for consumer education in the Department of Economic Development, Environment and Tourism in Polokwane. Prior to this, he was a trade and liquor inspector in the very same department, and he is now the current convener of the Consumer Education Committee and member of the Consumer Protection Forum. So welcome, Dr. Jimmy, and we are looking forward to this presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to you. Good evening to all the people in the platform. Am I audible? Just to check if you're all hearing me. Can I get an indication, Chair, if I'm audible?
Yes, you are, loud and clear. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
As indicated by the Chair, my name is Jimmy Golele from the National Credit Regulator, known as NCR. I'm sure we have all heard of this organization before. Just that we may be understanding what it does, some may be misunderstanding what it does, and hopefully tonight we'll be able to clarify and demystify some of these things. I was happy when I saw the short video that within the programs of the BMF, you target women, young professionals, and then all the other target groups that you have. And interestingly or luckily, they speak to the kind of work that we do or what we have to do. Let me declare that it's kind of difficult to come after such an articulate and eloquent speaker as Mr. Linong was, but I'll try and catch up. I'll try and make sure you don't fall asleep. Let's start by saying, what is the mandate of the National Credit Regulator? Our mandate as the National Credit Regulator is to regulate the credit industry and then ensure there is a level playing field for all the participants in the credit industry. However, we also have a mandate of protecting your rights as consumers of credit. Why protect your rights as consumers of credit? This is because the credit providers have the financial muscle to protect themselves. If you as a consumer falls foul or gets into some challenge or gets stuck in the mud, credit providers or big business usually have the financial muscle to employ the services of legal firms to come after you. However, what happens when you as a consumer are the one who's being given the short end of the stick? Sometimes we just throw our hands in the air and give up, saying there's no way I can fight this big store. And now that is why entities such as the National Credit Regulator exist, so that they can offer recourse to you as a consumer. So we regulate the credit industry, we register industry players. The industry players in the credit industry would include credit providers. Your credit providers would be your banks, your furniture shops, your retail shops, your car finance, your car dealerships, wherever you can acquire goods or assets on credit. All those are credit providers. In addition to credit providers, we also register debt counselors. Debt counselors are people who are trained and registered with the National Credit Regulator to assist consumers who are over-indebted and no longer know what to do with their debts, or no longer have a plan as to who to pay and who not to pay, because their income does not come close to being enough to service their obligations. And then those debt counselors must register with the NCR, and we regulate their conduct, but their role is to assist consumers out there. The third entity which we register is credit bureaus. Mr. Linong mentioned something to do with credit bureaus, that if we don't pay for our accounts, we end up being handed over to credit bureaus, we end up being blacklisted. I will use blacklisted in this platform because that's the word that we are familiar with. However, in the space of the National Credit Regulator and the National Credit Act, we normally refer to negative listing, not blacklisting. However, to ensure that I remain on par with everyone, I'll speak to the word that we use on a day-to-day basis. The other entities that we register, which I will not emphasize much, is the ADRs, Alternative Dispute Resolution Agents, and the PDAs, Payment Distribution Agents. I will not necessarily talk much about those, but the first three is because they directly affect us and then affect our lives on a daily basis. Now, the National Credit Regulator is an agency of the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. And then that is the department that we report to, but we do have some autonomy to operate as an agency of that particular department. And then we are established in terms of the National Credit Act. This very act that I'm referring to gives you as a consumer some rights. I will go very quickly through the rights so that we can then discuss maybe other topics as we proceed. One of the rights that you have, which I normally emphasize, is the right to disclosure of information. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of our debt problems, of our credit challenges, sometimes stem from the fact that information is not disclosed to us the way it should when we get into credit agreements. We are given half information. We are only given information which will make us look at credit in a nice way and think this is something nice to have, this is something to go for. If we were given full information as to what we are getting ourselves into when we get into credit agreements, sometimes we will think twice about signing this credit agreement. So the Act provides that a credit provider, when in the process of getting into a credit agreement with a consumer, I'll give you two examples where not giving full information puts the consumer in the back foot. One could be when one joins some insurance products. Let's take the funeral policies, for instance. In most instances, the providers in the space will hardly tell you that when your kids reach the age of 21, they are no longer covered, unless you can provide proof that they are still at school. This puts you on the back foot in a situation whereby when the kids reaches the age of 21, you are not aware that they are no longer covered. Sometimes you still keep them, and then maybe you still pay premiums thinking that that particular kid is covered when they are not. When something, God forbid, happens, maybe your kid passes on at the age of 22 or 23, maybe they were participating in some strike at varsity or college, maybe get shot by the police. You think you are covered, only to discover when you go to claim that you are actually not covered, because by the time the kid reached the age of 21, they were kicked out by the system or by the way the policy is structured. Another common example, which some of you or most of you might relate with, is when we are in the process of purchasing our loved wills, our fleshy cars. Sometimes you find that the credit provider puts you in a credit agreement, which is a balloon payment or a residual, but they never explain this concept to you. And then you buy this big car, you pay 10,000 per month for 7 years. At the end of 7 years, you think you are done paying. When you go and pay your last, what you think is your last installment, you get the shock of your life when you are told there is 180,000 still waiting for you in a balloon payment, which you need to pay or surrender the car. Or if you don't have the 180,000, you may then have to reapply for finance to then further finance the purchase of that vehicle. However, had this been disclosed upfront to you, had you been made to understand what you are getting yourself into, or what this balloon payment is, you may have made a different decision regarding your credit agreement. So it is critical, ladies and gentlemen, that as and when you get into a credit agreement, all the material information that you need to make an informed decision is disclosed to you. When this information is not disclosed to you, it is your right and it is your responsibility to ask the credit provider to give you this information, to explain and then use simple language which you will understand. The other right that you have is the right to receive information in plain and understandable language. You also have the right to a free credit report once a year. Under the current pandemic, ladies and gentlemen, this is a right which you must not miss using. Use this right to contact a credit bureau, request your credit profile or credit report. It is supposed to be given to you for free once every year by all the registered credit bureaus. Why am I saying it is critical that you should use this right, especially now that we're under the pandemic? People are broke, people are stranded, people are looking for all manner of ways of getting their hands onto some money. And then this may also include people doing fraud, people doing things they shouldn't be doing. And one such thing that they may do is to go out to the market, open accounts in your names. And because they will only use your ID number, but not necessarily your contact number, you may never get to know that an account has been opened in a particular shop with your name. You may not know a contract cell phone has been bought in your name. You may be using an entry-level cell phone and somebody may be walking around with the top-notch latest gadget that costs thousands and thousands of rands that has been acquired using your name. So for you to have access to this information is that you need to contact the credit bureau, get a copy of your free credit bureau report. When you contact the bureaus, they may try to encourage you to subscribe If you have the money, if you can afford to, by all means, you can do that. However, if you cannot, speak to the free credit report, because you are entitled to one in terms of the National Credit Act a year. The right to confidential treatment of your personal information. Whatever information you give to credit providers, they must use it for the purpose that you are giving it to them. You have the right to receive regular statements. If you have a credit agreement, the credit provider must give you regular statements so that you know where you are with your account. You are not shooting in the dark and paying and not knowing exactly where you are. You have the right to receive reasons when your credit application is rejected. The credit provider must tell you why they are rejecting your application. And they must give you the information in full. They mustn't just tell you, we won't give you credit because you are blacklisted. They must tell you, we will not give you credit because Golele Furnishers has blacklisted you for non-payment for the past 6 months of your account, so that you know what to do, you know how to address the situation. And then if you become over-indebted, you have the right to receive assistance in the form of debt counseling or ADR, whereby you may approach an ADR agent or you may approach a debt counselor, and then they must assist you with the necessary debt relief measures. Now, let's talk a bit about credit. Most of these things have already been mentioned by the previous speaker, so I'll just quickly go through them. If you are credit active, or if you are intending to be credit active, you need to be aware that credit does not come cheap. Credit comes at a cost. Therefore, you need to make an well thought of decision whether you are going to use credit or not. And if you use credit, what are you using this credit for? Are you using this as good credit or bad credit, good debt or bad debt? What is the differentiator between good credit and bad credit? The differentiator between good credit and bad credit is you use credit, good credit, for things that will appreciate in value, and you use bad credit for things that depreciate in value. The examples are as indicated in that slide. When you take a mortgage bond, under normal circumstances, the value of your house is supposed to appreciate over time. If you take a loan to acquire some education, when you qualify, that betters your chances of getting a promotion at work. If you go into business, then you are likely to make more money, which will make your lot much better. When you go into real estate, and then when you go into investing, then you are taking or acquiring good credit. However, on investing, ladies and gentlemen, let me also give a disclaimer there. Depending on what you are investing in, if you are one of those people who want to be rich overnight and you get taken by these Ponzi schemes and scams that will promise to multiply your money overnight, give us 10,000 in 3 months, we'll give you 50,000. Then you may also as well end up in debt. And that will make that debt a bad one, not necessarily a good one, or that will make that credit a bad one. There are still people today who are still paying for loans which they took to invest in Defense X back in the years, loans that they took to invest in Triple M, loans that they took to invest in Kipi. I'm sure you are familiar with those names that I'm mentioning. Examples of bad debt or bad credit are credit cards. Natalie Nong mentioned the credit card that it has become fashionable. There is actually a saying that goes like, the modern slave is no longer in chains, but in debt. A credit card can be a nice thing to have if you know how to use it, if you know how it works. But that as it may be, it remains a bad debt. It remains a very dangerous thing to have in your hands if you do not know how it works. So be careful of those black cards that you are offered. I'm not saying don't go for the black card, go for it, but understand how it works. Make sure it doesn't enslave you, because it has an enslaving tendency. You get a credit card, you get the 20,000 buying power, you go and buy. Come month's end, you go and pay. The minute you pay, that amount becomes available, you cross the floor, you spend. The next month you pay, you cross the floor, you spend. If you are not aware or if you're not careful, you will pay that credit card for the rest of your life. So you need to be careful. You need to have a healthy relationship with your credit card. Cash advances, your flashy vehicles, they fall under bad debt or bad credit because their value depreciates. Consumer debt, the tendency that we have these days of buying acha and juice and food on credit from some stores, that makes what you're using or what you're doing to be considered bad debt or bad credit. Payday loans, all those are examples of bad credit. What makes credit expensive? Credit is expensive because the credit provider is allowed to charge you interest, initiation fee, service fee, and credit life insurance. If you are a good consumer, you are likely going to pay the first 4 bullet points there: interest, initiation fee, service fee, and credit life insurance. However, if you are a challenged consumer or a consumer who may be undergoing some financial stress or financial difficulties, and you struggle to pay your accounts, you may end up being liable for default charges, which we call arrears in everyday language. When you skip installments, the credit provider has the right to charge you default charges. And if you become a serial defaulter, then the credit provider may hand you over to debt collectors, and then you'll become liable for collection charges and collection costs. On the fees that I mentioned there, I would just like to make mention of one in particular, which you need to be aware of: the initiation fee. Particularly when you are buying a big ticket item, such as a car or a house. In most instances, the credit providers will not tell you that you have the right to, or you are allowed to pay the initiation fee upfront. For instance, say you are buying a house worth 800,000. Your initiation fee will be around 6,500 to 7,000. And then if you have the 6,000 or 7,000, it is advisable, colleagues or ladies and gentlemen, that you should pay this fee upfront. Remove it so that it doesn't become part of your credit agreement. Because if you are going to pay that 6,000 over 20 years, you may end up paying 50 to 70,000 because of the duration that it will take you to pay that amount. However, it is critical that you should have access to this information. You should know this, because most of the times the credit providers don't let us know that we can pay this initiation fee upfront and remove it from the cost of credit. Some facts about, we'll skip that one. Over-indebtedness. One becomes over-indebted when the money at their disposal is not enough to meet their obligations. I think Mr. Linong touched on this as well. Just some statistics, we have about 25 million credit active consumers. Of those 25 million credit active consumers, 14 million are in good standing. It means their accounts are okay. However, we have almost 10 million consumers that are struggling with their accounts, whose accounts are in the red, whose accounts have been handed over or will be handed over shortly. In total, you and I owe the credit industry 1.9 trillion rands. That is how much we owe the credit industry. Mr. Linong has mentioned some of these aspects. I will just skip on them and then go to consequences of being over-indebted. When you are over-indebted, and then noting that the BMF also has some youthful people in its platforms. When you are over-indebted, that tampers with your chances of accessing job opportunities, particularly if you will be in the employment sector. Chair indicated that she was previously under the employment of a bank. And I think she probably knows that if you are blacklisted and you are working in the finance, it is not easy for you to get a job in the finance industry. So it is critical, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure that we avoid a situation whereby we end up with a negative listing in the credit bureau. Those of you who have kids who may be in tertiary institutions, tell them that if they have student accounts, they need to maintain them. because otherwise they will go to tertiary, pass on record time. But if they are going to seek employment in the financial sector, they may become unemployable if they have been blacklisted or negatively listed in the credit bureaus. Other consequences of being over-indebted is stress, which leads to depression, and then everything will just, the wheels will just come off the wagon there. And then other consequences can be unhappiness, absenteeism, abuse of substances, and underperformance. And then this underperformance will either be at work and at home as well. And you can imagine what happens if there's underperformance in both instances, in any case, whether it's at home or it's at work. Underperformance is just never good for any scenario. Take note of the following. To minimize your chances of falling foul in your credit agreements and then remaining in charge of your finances, you need to live within your means. You need to live within your means. You need to spend less than you earn. And then you need to be aware that you cannot borrow your way out of debt. The more you borrow, when you borrow from A to pay B and borrow from B to pay C, you are only making your situation worse. And you will reach a scenario or a situation where you are no longer borrowable, where no one can no longer give you any money to continue paying like that. So you need to know that you cannot borrow your way out of debt. Most of the things that get us into trouble with finances and with credit is our lifestyle. Gentlemen will agree there is a tendency that every Friday we must pass by that store and get that holy water with a name and surname to keep in the boot of our car so that we can produce it when we're having after tears. Some ladies, it's a norm that every Friday they must go to the retail store to acquire the dress for the funeral over the weekend and the second dress for the baby shower after the funeral. And then this being done on credit. There is no harm in any of the things that I have mentioned if you afford to acquire them using your own money. However, if you acquire them using credit, then it becomes a serious problem. And then it calls for a review of our lifestyle. It calls for a review of or a change in our lifestyle. The tendency of saying, I need to go to the movies every Friday, I need to go to holiday in Cape Town or Durban when you have not budgeted, when you have not planned for that, and you are going to use the black card which Mr. Linong referred to earlier on, it becomes a major challenge. The other point that you need to take care of or to understand is that no is an answer. People get into trouble with finances because they are afraid of saying no. You get a call offering you a cell phone while you already have 2 contract cell phones, but you find it difficult to tell the person on the phone that I already have a phone, thank you, I don't need any other phone. Or you get somebody coming to sell you a policy or an insurance product or whatever. People will come selling you, you know what happens in the offices there, they sell you the Justin products, the Tupperware, and all these things. But then people acquire all these things which they still have. I think ladies will agree with me that there is an addiction towards this Tupperware which you just buy, and 5 years down the line, it's still wrapped in the plastic that's never been used. So meaning you just acquired it on credit while you did not even need it. So we need to become comfortable with saying no and not necessarily even having to justify why we're saying no. You can simply say no next time, but not right now. I don't need this particular thing right now. To manage your debt, you need to budget. If you can, if you are in a relationship, budget with your partner. If you are in a family setup, budget with your kids as well. This will help the people in your life not to have unrealistic expectations from you. They will know what is available and what is not available. You need to pay your accounts on time and in full, and you need to stop ignoring letters of demand. People get letters and they shove them under the shelves without reading them. And if you cannot pay, contact the service provider. This Mr. Linong has mentioned already. Now, under the current pandemic, what are our options? Nobody saw this thing coming. This thing caught all of us off guard, and then unfortunately it is with us, and it will be with us for some time. Now, what are our options when we have challenges, particularly from a financial angle? One of the options that you have, ladies and gentlemen, is to check if your credit agreement has a credit life insurance product linked to it. In most instances, when you apply for credit or when you get into a credit agreement, the credit provider links your credit agreement with a credit life insurance product. So that when something happens to you, say you lose your job or you become disabled or you pass away, then the credit life insurance may be used to assist. In the case of retrenchment, it will pay for almost 12 months of installments. In the case of disability and death, the credit life insurance is supposed to settle your debt. Debt review or debt canceling, that is also one of your options. If you are experiencing financial difficulties, financial challenges under COVID-19, and even under general, ladies and gentlemen, one of the options that you have is to consider going for debt review or debt canceling. You approach a debt counselor, or even before approaching the debt counselor, you yourself, you can go to the people that you owe, you can go to the credit providers and try to rearrange your debts. Find out if they are not willing to give you lower installments which you can afford and which will still leave something in your pocket for your day-to-day living. Now, if you are going to use the services of a debt counselor, you need to know that this is not a free service. Debt counselors are not employed by the NCR. They are independent business people. They make their money off you for helping you. So they will go to the people that you owe, negotiate installments that you can afford. If needs be, they will go to court to seal the agreement, and then you will pay. It is not an easy process, ladies and gentlemen. However, it is an essential process because you have to deal or grapple with the reality of losing your assets or your goods. So instead of losing your assets, instead of losing your goods, you may go for debt canceling, because once you are under debt canceling, the credit provider cannot repossess your assets if you keep with the payment arrangements as agreed under the debt review or debt canceling process. You may go for debt canceling in 3 circumstances. One, voluntarily, you may approach a debt counselor, or you may be referred by a credit provider who may see that you are struggling and they may tell you to go to a debt counselor who will restructure your debts, or you may be referred by court. When a credit provider takes you to court, maybe to apply to repossess your goods or to get a garnish order, in some instances, the court will say, instead of doing all those things, refer this consumer to debt canceling. Surrender of goods. The third option that you have under the current pandemic, and not just under the pandemic, under all circumstances, but we're just emphasizing the current pandemic because things are not as they ought to be or as they should be. People are encountering some financial stress. You have the right, ladies and gentlemen, to return the goods that you have bought on credit to the credit provider. You invoke Section 127 of the National Credit Regulator, the National Credit Act rather. The process works as follows. You give a written notification to the credit provider that I can no longer afford, or I anticipate I will not be able to afford these items. Can I please bring them back? And then you send the goods back to the credit provider. The credit provider will evaluate the goods and give you an evaluation notice. They will give you a notification that the car that you have returned, we think we can sell it for 80,000. When you get that notification, if your account is up to date, you still have the right to withdraw from the surrender if you feel the amount which the credit provider is offering is rather too low. However, if your account is in arrears, once you have handed over the goods to the credit provider, you cannot take them back. The process will have to continue. The credit provider will sell the assets in a public auction. Say, for example, you returned a car and the balance on your car was 100,000. If the credit provider sells your car for 110,000 at an auction, then they must give you 10,000 as your profit. However, if they sell the car for 80,000 and there is a shortfall of 20,000, the 20,000 is due from you. You need to make arrangements with the credit provider to settle that 20,000. Mr. Linong mentioned the ostrich mentality. That is what you see the gentleman doing there. When we ignore the calls, when we ignore the letters, when we change the street where the shop is, we are practicing what Mr. Linong referred to as the ostrich mentality. However, it doesn't help. That gentleman, when you ignore the calls, you think you are running away from the problem. But then these credit providers have your work address, have your home address. They will know where to find you. So you need to own up to your debts. You need to make financial decisions that you will not regret. Amongst those, particularly with the youth, buy cars that are affordable. Buy cars that you will afford, buy houses that are within your means so that you avoid most of these challenges that you may encounter. In the interest of time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to put a pause to this presentation at this stage and then ask the question, where are you today? Not in front of your laptop, I mean, where are you financially, your financial health? Are you surviving? Are you struggling? Are you keeping afloat? Where do you want to be tomorrow financially? And I'm happy that we have a financial planner in our midst. Once you make that decision, then you know what to do. And then how do you intend to get there? Allow me to put a pause there and take questions if there are questions, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, Mr. Golele, thank you so much for your presentation. Very informative. As I mentioned earlier, it's all the stuff that I used to work with as a private banker, and I'm very passionate about. We have a question here from Melili. She says, please explain how credit score works.
All right, thank you. Your credit score is a number. Let's start with that. Your credit score is a number which you will get from a particular credit bureau. But interestingly, you may find one credit bureau has 630, another one has 620, another one has 600 on your name. The credit bureaus use information regarding how you pay your accounts, when you pay your accounts, regarding how you go about looking for credit. They consolidate all that information and arrive at a score that classifies you in terms of those numbers. When you have a number, that number will be linked onto whether it's average, whether it's poor, whether it's good. So that will then inform the credit providers at a glance whether you are worth considering when you apply for credit. So if your credit score has been, maybe you have not been paying your accounts and then your credit score has been damaged and it's low. When you pick up, when you change your habits, reprioritize, as Mr. Linong indicated earlier on, and then you pay your accounts, they become up to date, then your credit score will also gradually improve to a level whereby you may be considered in favorable light by credit providers.
We've got another question here. How true is it that the more you check your credit score, the lower it gets?
It is not true. Remember I said you have the right to request your credit profile from the credit bureaus. Some people have subscription services whereby they get their credit reports on a monthly basis. You can imagine where their credit score would be. And then what affects your credit score is your payment behavior and your requests for quotations, how you go about soliciting or trying to get loans is what affects your score, not your requesting your credit profile. And if I may add, Chair, while we are still on that, if I may emphasize what I said earlier on, ladies and gentlemen, make it a habit to get in touch with the credit bureaus to apply for your free credit reports, particularly under the pandemic. As I indicated, a lot of people will be, particularly the crooks, they will be on high alert now to try and get anything and everything using your names. They will go out there to apply for accounts. Just now that we are under the pandemic, I think I have received not less than 10 calls of people claiming to have been victims of ID fraud. So it is critical that from time to time, you get in touch with the credit bureau and you get your credit report so that you see your standing there. And then you need to know that if you find information that you don't agree with in your credit report, in terms of the law, you are allowed to challenge that information. And the credit bureau must investigate and within 20 business days, give you a response to your query or to your disgruntlement.
Any more questions from our guests? Any more questions for Mr. Leno? Okay, it's 21 after 7. We are right on time, and it's just been such a refreshing session with so much information and so much that we can talk about regarding you know, taking care of our finances. But I mean, a scary number that I usually also quote is that we are 1.9 trillion rand in debt, and to also find out that there's so many, about 10 million consumers who are in the red. It means that we have a long way to go, and we need to have more and more and more of these conversations about managing personal finances. So thank you to you, Mr. Golele, and thank you so much, Mr. Leno, for joining us tonight and availing yourselves to come and speak to us and give us these gems about how we need to manage our finances. We really do appreciate your time, and we really hope that we can have these conversations. I mean, I feel like these conversations are like hearing that sermon that we keep hearing over and over and over again. This information does not get old. It just needs to be repeated, because sometimes we forget and we get trapped in certain habits. So again, thank you very much. I will just go, I'll just ask our guests one more time if there are any questions. And if there aren't any more questions, then we can close our meeting.
Chair, if I may just say this, perhaps, in a country where we are seriously over-indebted, where financial literacy is not at a rate or at a level where it should be, it is commendable when we have sessions such as this. And then I want to challenge the people in the platform to share the information which they acquired today, to challenge the people in the platform to say if they can, they need to cascade this down. If they can organize sessions for their other people elsewhere. You may be a member of the BMF, but you may also be a member of the Stokvel in Welkom or in Mangaung or wherever. We as the NCR are available to conduct sessions for any grouping of people anywhere in the country, so that we give information to people, so that people can make informed decisions about money and money-related matters. And my closing statement is, we need to manage our debts or our debts will manage us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a question from Mr. Kezas Kosana. He asks, do creditors have the right to debit your account without your consent?
They don't. You may recall sometime last year, there was news that we were fighting with one bank because of a principle called set off, whereby if you owe them, they see money in an account, they could just go and take the money without your consent. And then that has been declared illegal. People need to have consent to access your money. People need to inform you that you owe us, and then this is what we are going to do in order for us to get our money that is due to us from you, not just raid your account without you knowing. However, as consumers, we also need to be careful, because sometimes we think people have accessed our accounts without access or without our consent, when we have actually signed the forms which gives them consent to our accounts. And that is because we sign things we have not read. Even if you are given 20 pages, if you can, ask to take the 20 pages away, read them at the comfort of your own home, come back tomorrow, having read them. This behavior or habit of just signing stuff we have not read, in that package, they give you a form whereby you give them a blank check. They simply add a date and time and whatever, and then you cannot prove there was no consent. So we need to be careful about the stuff that we sign.
Thank you, sir. We have a comment from Nonku. She says, this is gold. This session should be repeated and uploaded on YouTube. And I totally agree with her. We need to send out as much information as we possibly can. So thank you so much again to our guests and for the valuable information that you have shared with us. Thank you for your time as well. To all the people who have participated and who are going to watch this, thank you to you too. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions and your input. We really appreciate it. And yeah, yes, I think that's all that I can say. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And may you all have a good evening, and may we all prosper and create lots of wealth. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.